Hi again, unlicensed thinkers. Today I'm going to talk about what is more important, the happiness of the soul or the happiness of the ego? This true happiness or this prideful happiness? Which one is more important? Which one is more effective at making you truly happy, at making you aligned with your soul? And so I'm going to bring this up in the context of speaking about free will and happiness, because I can and I like to. So before I do that, though, I can't quite reach that like button. If you could go ahead and get that for me, that'd be great. Thank you. So we don't decide what makes us happy. We don't decide our preferences or our hobbies or anything like that. We don't really even get to decide what our emotions are. We can deal with our emotions. We can try out different hobbies. We can taste different foods, all these different things to see what our preferences are, but they don't really come from us consciously. Our preferences, our joy, all of these things, they come from somewhere else. I'm not going to get into where that might be, but they're delivered to us. So we don't have what you would call free will in that choice. And some examples would be, do you prefer chocolate or vanilla? Well, neither one is wrong. You didn't make that choice. You didn't wake up one morning and said, I think I'm going to like chocolate more than vanilla today. You just did. That's just the way it was. When it comes to colors, you don't decide, I'm going to prefer blue to orange. No, you like blue or you like orange. That's the way it is. I suppose you could like both, whatever. Music, you don't decide, I'm going to like country now. You might start to like country for whatever reason, but you don't make that decision. You don't go from, I like jazz, I don't like country, to I'm going to stop liking jazz and I'm going to start liking country. It doesn't happen that way. When it comes to like hobbies and stuff, you may have people who like to knit and people who like to play video games. They may overlap. They may not. There's not really a decision that's made. You try knitting and you say, man, this is awesome. Or you say, this sucks. And so there you have it. There is your preference, but it's not a choice that you make. It just feels right. When something is aligned, it just feels right. And that could be a person. You like this person. You pick a particular career, something like that. This isn't something that you make a choice about. It's something that is given to you. And so one could say it happens against your free will. And there's nothing wrong with that. You like what you like, and good for you. Fantastic. I like what I like, and well, I suppose that's usually good, whatever. So to get more into what I'm talking about here, let's say I make an AI, but it's not conscious. And I put this AI into these different robots that are made to do different things. So I put the AI into a robot that's made to fly airplanes. And it does its thing. It flies the airplanes, and great. And then I reprogram that AI and I say, okay, now you're programmed to clean floors. And so I put it into a robot that cleans floors. And it doesn't care. It doesn't have a consciousness. It's like, okay, well, whatever. Clean floors. So then, let's say I create an AI that has consciousness. And I say, well, the best thing to do with this AI that has consciousness is I'm going to program it to enjoy a particular task. So I'm going to program this AI to enjoy flying planes. And so that will be its preference. Just like us, the AI didn't choose to get joy from flying an airplane. It just does. It was given to that AI. And same thing with cleaning floors or writing code or collecting garbage, even being a nanny or whatever, taking care of kids in some way. The AI doesn't choose what it makes it happy. It just goes with what it was given that makes it happy. So, are any of these things cruel to do to this AI? Is it cruel to make it a pilot and make it enjoy flying airplanes? It doesn't seem cruel. Is it cruel to make it desire cleaning toilets? That's maybe more questionable, right? Because we think of that as a lesser job, which it's not really. But we might think that. We might say, well, that's mean that you made it happy cleaning toilets. Well, yeah, I mean, weird moral territory here, right? So are either of these AIs more or less happy? So if they're both programmed to be happy doing the thing that they're doing, is either one effectively less happy? And I would say no, they're still just as happy because they get their happiness from the thing that they're doing. And one could say that they're making a choice to do this thing because it makes them happy. So if I program the AI to say, okay, you are a nanny robot, you take care of kids now. Is them going and taking care of kids against their will? Or is it cruel? Or are they less happy than the robot that I programmed to be a CEO? You see where I'm going with this, right? So we don't choose our preferences, yet we're fine with what makes us happy usually. Sort of, but I'll get to that. So now let's move on to people, because like I said, you see where I'm going with this, right? So if I raise a person or even brainwash a person into getting joy from a particular task, are they any less happy than the person who chooses to prefer that task? So if a person has a preference for, say, I know this guy who runs a great Facebook group, and he is a landscaper. Well, he's happy being a landscaper. He's not unhappy with that idea. So should he be less happy? But again, we'll get to that. There's a whole lot that we're going to get to. I've only gotten through about a third of my notes now, but please stick with me because I think you'll understand where you can start looking at improving your own happiness and accepting what makes you happy. And so, is it cruel if this person was brainwashed or raised to do a particular job, to obtain happiness from a particular job or a particular activity? Is it then cruel to have them do that activity? Because they're happy, right? So are we taking away their happiness by not letting them do that or telling them that they shouldn't do that simply because they were brainwashed or raised to do that thing? Okay, so move on to the next one. Now, what if it's not brainwashing? What if it comes about through whatever means you consider the way we got here? So that could be creation, evolution, adaptation, whatever you think is the way that we got here. What if that is what instills this sense of joy in us? Are we less happy? Is that nature or that God or whatever put that into us through this process that got us here? Is that thing cruel because it gives us a preference for something? Well, I don't think so. I mean, because I think whatever it is that makes us happy is what makes us happy. And so then we have like the egoic happies and stuff like that. And so if I put these two AIs next to each other, say the one that flies planes and the one that cleans floors, and they're both happy because they're both doing their thing. This one's flying planes, this one's cleaning floors. They're both like, hey, this is what I like to do. I don't know why I like to do it, just like us. Just like we don't pick our preferences. These two AIs are saying, well, whatever. I mean, this is what I like to do. Don't get down on me for it, right? So what if the airplane flying AI starts looking at the floor cleaning AI and says, oh no, you can't be happy doing that. You absolutely, you should be doing something better than that. Well, isn't that plane flying AI telling the floor cleaning AI that it's wrong about its happiness? Well, that seems weird. So the floor cleaning AI, if it tried flying airplanes, would be less happy flying the airplanes. It would get in the cockpit and it would be like, well, this is okay. I mean, it's not what I like to do. I like cleaning floors. This seems weird to me. Why am I sitting here in this airplane? And so that's where the egoic happiness comes in, is thinking that you should be happy doing something because other people say it will make you happy, or it should make you happy, or it should be your preference, or this thing that you're doing is below you, and all this kind of stuff, right? So that's the egoic happiness as opposed to the true happiness. So the true happiness is, we don't know where it comes from. It comes from where it comes from. Maybe you saw your parents do it. Maybe it's just the way you are. Maybe you were born with a certain set of taste receptors that cause you to prefer one kind of food over another. It doesn't matter where this true happiness, as I would call it, this happiness of the soul comes from. The fact is that it makes you happy, and going against it is going to lead to unhappiness. So trying for that egoic happiness is not going to make you happier. All it's going to do is inflate your ego, and then you're left in this state of dissonance wondering, well, I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm not as happy as these other people that are going along with what their soul's happiness is, right? So who is the cruel one then? Is it the one that says, do what makes you happy, or is it the one that tries to ruin the happiness of your soul and tell you to go for the egoic happiness? And it seems to me that the one who is telling you to go for the egoic happiness over the soul's happiness is the one that's actually trying to ruin you, trying to ruin your happiness. The one going with what was given to them as happiness are the truly happy ones. So that AI, that floor cleaning AI, sitting in the cockpit of an airplane because he's told this is a better job, this is better, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to want this, he's not happier. Would an AI be a he? It isn't happier? I don't know. Whatever an AI is called. So that AI is going against its nature. It's going what it's meant to, or it's going against what it's meant to do. And so I go back to my friend who is a landscaper, and he's happy. Should I look at him and go, no, you'd be much happier if you were a CEO. You should be doing that. And he'd be like, you're insane. Sit in an office all day having to deal with this high stress shit? No, he'd be like, no. I'm hanging out here in the sun playing in the dirt. Those idiots putting on suits and going into an office, they don't know what happiness is. So you see where there's a clash here, right? So if he was trying to do what society says he should do, he would be trying to work in an office. He would be trying to get this fancy job, all this kind of stuff, right? But that's not him. That's not what makes him happy. And I clearly remember working at a software company and sitting in one of the office rooms doing whatever work, and we would actually watch the landscapers outside as they went by, and we would be envious of them. We would look at them. Here we are making, pretty decent money, and working in this air-conditioned office, and we're sitting there looking outside at those landscapers going, man, they got it so good. Look at how nice their life is. And at the end of the day, they can point back at all that stuff that they did on the grounds, and they can say, I did that. So you see how nice that looks? I did that. So we were envious of them. And so all this stuff and a couple more things that I'm going to get into are what really inspired me to make this video, because I think it's an important thing to think about. And it's not telling anybody what they should do. It's truly looking at what makes you happy and why are you choosing to do it. So I was just talking about this with a philosophical group, and that was part of what inspired it. But there was a meetup group for spirituality stuff that I went to recently. And in this group, well, not that recently because of what's going on. I guess this was back in probably like January or something. So a little while ago. So in this meetup group, there was this lady talking, and she said that she counsels people, and she counsels women because women are counted in that. But what she said about women, I thought was just absolutely horrible. She said, I counsel these women, I talk to these women, and I find it absolutely shameful that they identify with being wives and mothers. And I was like, wow, shameful? Because that is wife and mother. Those throughout our entire history have been considered the most important jobs, is who is raising that next generation. And that's something that most women have gotten an extreme amount of pride from, and absolutely been proud of and been identified with, and being able to brag about their kids and all this kind of stuff. And so anyways, both of these things, this philosophical group and this meetup, reminded me of this article that I read, and something like this, I'm pretty sure I have the wording right. It's the paradox of declining female happiness. And what this talks about is, if we go back to the 1970s, they did a survey of the happiness of women. So this is just after women really big time started getting into the workforce and stuff like that, and it started becoming more normal for women to be in the workforce and go for a career over going for staying at home and taking care of children. And so I should note in this thing, it is female happiness that has declined. Male happiness has stayed the same or increased a little bit. So interesting point there. But female happiness has declined quite a bit. And so what a lot of people will say is, well, women didn't know any better back then. They didn't really know because they didn't have these choices. So they didn't really know what would make them happy. Well, weird, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure women were just as smart back then and knew that they were happy and all that kind of stuff. But that's really the crux of this, right? It's kind of like saying, well, they didn't know any better. The only way they could possibly be happy is to be happy the way I say they should be happy, because they didn't understand what happiness was. I do. They didn't. So they need to be just like me in order to be happy. That seems really weird, right? If I said that to somebody, if I just walked up to him and said what essentially means the same thing, and I said, no, you're not happy. You don't know any better because you're not doing what I'm doing. If you were doing what I'm doing, you'd actually be happy, but you're not really happy. Your happiness is fake because your happiness comes from somewhere else. But again, I take you back to what I started this with, is our preferences do not come from us. Our preferences come from somewhere else. And so one of the places that comes from is our history, is our evolution, our creation, whatever it might be, into what we are now. And so we needed, because human children take a long time to turn into useful things, they are small things for a while that don't do much. And so what we really needed was this separation between what what men prefer to do and what women prefer to do. And so it made sense evolutionary, and I'm sorry, I'm going to speak to that. If any of you are creationists, I understand it fits into creation just fine, but it's kind of easier to talk about it in this sense. Or we'll use the word adaptation. So it would make sense that women adapted this sense of happiness and pride about taking care of children. And then it made sense that men developed this sense of pride at being the hunters and the resource gatherers, so to speak. And so so then we talk about raising people. Well, what if it's not we're raising people to be a certain thing so much as it is that people are raised to be that thing because that's the thing that works in order to keep us alive. And so they are given that sense of happiness and pride. So women throughout history were given a sense of pride. And so it's not so much that they raise other women to be this way, it's that this is what makes them happy, and this is what is necessary for the evolution or the continuation of our society. So the two things really go together. It's not like one causes the other. So the raising and the happiness go together. The necessity goes in there. It's like this is what has to happen in order for us to continue. And so granted, the world has changed. The world is a different place. But that doesn't change the fact that we are imprinted, just like that robot that was programmed to do a certain thing. We are imprinted, we are built and coded to do a certain thing. So why hasn't men's happiness gone down? Why is it just women's happiness that's gone down? And so the paradox is that women are getting what they say they want, the egoic happiness, right? But they're foregoing their soul's happiness, their programmed happiness, so to speak. And again, programming does not make it bad. You're still just as happy if you're programmed to do that thing that makes you, and you're doing the thing that you're programmed will make you happy. So why hasn't men's happiness gone down? Why is it just women's happiness that it's gone down? Well, it's because men are still doing exactly what makes them happy. So men are still doing the thing of going out and hunting and being men and being strong and whatever, and they're literally still doing the same thing that they were doing. What's changed is that women were going after things that they thought would make them happy, and instead we're going towards things that were not aligned with it. So it's just like the person who likes to knit and doesn't like video games saying, I'm going to go like video games. Well, that might happen. That might not happen. Who knows? I got a visitor here. So neither one is right. And of course, I'm not saying anything to the effect of women should just stay home and that should be all they're allowed to do. Absolutely not. I absolutely believe in choice, but you want to make your choice aligned with that which is programmed into you, that which is your preference, that which comes about as your preference, that which makes you happy is what you want to try to choose to do. And for some women, that might be being a CEO. Fantastic. It might be being a coder. It might be being a garbage collector. Who cares? But if you're unhappy doing the thing that is egoic happiness, if you're unhappy doing the thing that you're told you should be doing, then it's time to pause and consider, is this really what makes me happy? And this applies to everybody. This applies to men too. If you're out there trying to be a CEO and you want to be a landscaper, go be a freaking landscaper. So I'm not only talking about women. It's just that's the big conversation that brought this up and inspired this video is about women being unhappy or less happy than they were previously. And I care about the happiness of all people. So I'm not telling people what they should do. except you should go towards what makes you truly happy, what makes your soul happy, as opposed to what your friend and society and everything tell you should make you happy, because it won't necessarily make you happy. So in conclusion, I'm just going to say, do what your heart says to do. Don't do what your ego says to do. Because you're going to be happier doing what your heart says than you are doing what your ego says. And like my story about working at the software company says, I can tell that I would be much happier working for a landscaping company than I would working for a software company, because of the way I could look at those people and have that sense of true envy within me and look out at those guys out there working on the yards or working on the grounds and say, man, they got it good, while I'm doing what is supposed to make me happy and bringing home this big paycheck, working in an office and all this kind of stuff. It's not true. It's not how it works. So remember that your preferences don't come from you. You don't decide them. Go with what your preferences are. Go with what your heart says, that sounds like the life that I want to live. Do that, and you're going to have a lot more good days, I promise. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Be sure to hit like and share the video if you think it'll help someone.